Okay, so we're going to talk about ways to read and analyze this poem. Now, we're going to skip number 1 only because you guys all already know how to do that, okay? And you've sat this poem, it's been sitting in front of you for a little bit, and some of you guys even said, Miss, I've seen something in this poem already. So we're going to talk about ways that you're going to read and analyze the poem. And there's going to be different steps each time. And you might say, oh, I've done that one before, I've done this one, but I'm going to give you time to analyze or make notes on it. Because if you look at this poem, is this the kind of page you want to bring in, blank and pretty like this, to your discussion tomorrow?
No.
No. Because what happens if you come in with this blank, or you have come in with only a few things underlined or highlighted?
You get a 0, probably.
Why? Why might you get a 0?
Because you have no idea what to say.
Because you won't know what to say. Okay? I'm not grading the paper. What am I grading tomorrow? What you talk about and how you converse with other people, which we were just looking at. So in our student-led discussion tomorrow, you should bring this in. Some people even came in. I already saw people writing on the back, writing on a separate sheet, came in last year with note cards. However you want to do it, because you're going to be looking at what this poem's about in all of these different ways, and you're going to have to think about, that's why this is on your table, what kind of comments you make. Remember, they get deeper and deeper and deeper the further you go to the right, which we practiced with last week and this week already.
Are we all going to talk in this?
Well, hopefully you won't all shout at once.
No, but I mean all in the same
In one big
time.
circle, yep, just like you saw. Okay, one big circle. So we're going to start today with the ways to read and analyze a poem for number 2. So read it out loud. Think about, like you guys were just telling me, when you read it out loud, you can hear certain things. What kinds of things can you hear when you read it out loud?
Emotion.
Emotion, but what else can you hear when you read it out loud that you might not notice when it's in your head? Think about what we've been studying this past week. Why would I tell you to read something?
Alliteration.
Alliteration. What else? What else did we talk about this past week that you can hear when you say it out loud? Repetition, assonance. So these are kinds of things that you might notice by reading it out loud. How many of you guys have ever done this? You're reading it out loud and you trip over the word because you skip something in your head and you have to stop and go back. Raise your hand if that's happened to you. Okay, when you read it silently, your brain doesn't always do that. It oftentimes just moves past it. So you might notice more things as you hear them, okay? Your eyes are focused on it. Your brain is also hearing the words that you're saying. So it's twice as hard or twice as strong going in. So we're going to read it out loud once. I'm going to do that for you guys since you've already seen it silently to yourself. Some of you guys have even noticed. And then I'm going to have you write on it. So as I'm reading, you can underline or circle or make a note if you want. But anything that you underline or circle, what should you do with that? Make a note either while I'm reading or when we pause after. So I'm going to start first with the top of the poem. So I do not just want you to have a highlighter out. If you have a highlighter, you must have a pen or a pencil as well. I prefer that you don't even use a highlighter, but if you like it, that's fine. Highlighters, I think, encourage you just to make
Everything line.
a streak of line, they call it, okay? And that does not encourage you to have the notes. All right, so you should be following along to this poem right here. Following along with this poem right here. Pencils or pens in hand. Here we go. Theme for English B by Langston Hughes, 1902 to 1967. The instructor said, "Go home and write a page tonight, and let that page come out of you. Then it will be true." I wonder if it's that simple. I am 22, colored, born in Winston-Salem. I went to school there, then Durham, then here, to this college on the hill above Harlem. I am the only colored student in my class. The steps from the hill lead down to Harlem, through a park, then I cross St. Nicholas, 8th Avenue, 7th, and I come to the Y, the Harlem Branch Y, where I take the elevator up to my room, sit down, and write this page. It's not easy to know what is true for you or me at 22, my age. But I guess I'm what I feel and see and hear. Harlem, I hear you. Hear you, hear me. We too, you, me, talk on this page. I hear New York too. Me? Who? Well, I like to eat, sleep, drink, and be in love. I like to work, read, learn, and understand life. I like a pipe for a Christmas present. Or records. Bessie, Bop, Bach. I guess being colored doesn't make me not like the same things other folks like who are other races. So, will my page be colored that I write? Being me, it will not be white. But it will be a part of you, instructor. You are white, yet a part of me as I am a part of you. That's American. Sometimes, perhaps, you don't want to be a part of me. Nor do I often want to be a part of you. But we are. That's true. As I learn from you, I guess you learn from me. Although you're older and white and somewhat more free. This is my page for English B. All right, so I saw as I was coming around, some of you guys highlighting or underlining or circling things. I'm going to give you guys about 1 to 2 minutes right now, maybe a little bit longer, just to make your first notes. What did you notice? What were you wondering? What did you think about? What did you notice? What were you thinking? There you go. What were you wondering? What did you notice? What were you thinking? What were you wondering? As you make your notes, look at the things that you underlined or circled and try to expand on those. Now that you have heard it out loud. All right, so we're going to move on to the second one. So you guys have looked at it silently. I read it out loud for you. What would you do if I wasn't here to read it out loud? Read it out loud yourself. I'm doing it because with so many of you in class, it might get a little distracting, okay? In a minute, we're going to separate into partners, though. Because number 3, and I want you to make sure you have this out on your iPad so you can identify some things and make some notes. Number 3 says, stopping and reading specifically for words or references to names and places that you don't know. So I'm going to have you guys circle words, references, names of places that you don't know. Are there words in here that maybe you don't know, or specifically places or names that you understand but you don't know what they mean?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to give you guys about 30 seconds to go through on that particular poem and just underline or circle or highlight, and then I'll give you time to go back and talk about them. Pick out things that are words or names or places that you maybe have heard of, but you don't really know what they mean. So for instance, how many of you guys have been to St. Louis? Nobody. How many of you guys have heard of the place St. Louis? Okay, maybe for me, maybe you've been to the States and you've heard about it. But if you don't know what that has to do with this poem, you would circle it. Right? So it could be a place that you've heard of, but you don't really know why they would mention it in this poem, or you don't know much about it other than it's a city, or other than it's a name. Okay? It could also be words that you don't understand, like vocabulary. So right now you're circling or underlining words or references to places or names that you are not familiar with or not very familiar with. All right, so let's pause for a second. What are some of the words or references or names or places that some of you guys didn't know or think you need to look up some information on? Harlem. What else?
Winston-Salem.
Winston-Salem. What else?
Durham.
Durham.
8th Avenue.
8th Avenue. Now, probably there's a lot of 8th Avenues in the world, but what do you think that means if it's talking about 8th Avenue, 7th Avenue? Is he in a small town? Small town?
No.
Could be, who knows? You might have to look up some other bigger ones, because if there's lots of them, it might just say the names of the street. So what are some other things in here that you don't know, places or references to?
But also he says,
St. Nicholas?
I hear New York too.
So maybe you can look up 8th Avenue, New York. So we have some other clues. What are some things I heard over here?
St. Nicholas?
St. Nicholas, which also seems to be a place in New York here. What else in here?
Bessie, Buck.
Bessie, Bop, and Bach. Okay, you might know a little bit, but you might not know why you would say those in here or what they're connected to. So what I'm hearing right now is that you guys got some things that you didn't really know a lot about. You've heard them, but you're not really sure what they are or what their importance is here. You are armed with an iPad. What should we do now?
Google.
Google them, look them up. Your job is not to read the whole thing that it says about it, but skim and see what notes you could put next to it that would connect with what you're reading. Okay? What is the importance? You're not going to read 12 pages on Durham. You're not going to read 12 pages on the Harlem Branch Y if you wrote that. But you might be able to make a note or two and see if you can put some of those together. So I'm going to give you guys about 2 or 3 minutes to do that right now. Be looking up the things that you circled or underlined that were references to words or references to names or places that you didn't know. So let's look at the next part. So I came around and watched you guys. Some of you guys found some really good information. How many of you guys found something on Bop or Bessie, because we mentioned that one? How many of you guys found something on Harlem Branch Y? Okay. How many of you guys found something on a name of a city or a town? Okay, so you might have some of those that you didn't finish. If you still have things that are circled that you didn't have a chance to look up, what could you do with that? Look it up later at home, okay? So let's go to the next one. Number 4. It says practice reading it again. So how many times will we have gone through it now?
3 times?
3, 4. There's multiple times we're going to go through it. Practice reading it again, sentence by sentence. So I want you guys to underline or highlight, not what I did, but what I'm about to. When I ask you to go through sentence by sentence, and I'll show you what that means in a second, it's going to ask you to notice what? What does it ask you to notice on your notes? Look on your sheet.
It's longer, shorter.
When you look at things sentence by sentence, not line by line. I heard it over here, Carol.
One is longer.
So circle or underline things that are much longer or much shorter than others. So here's what I'm going to say. When you write poetry, does it have to have sentences, full sentences in it? No, it doesn't. Some of the ones we've seen don't. Does this one have sentences in it? Do you see periods?
Yes.
Okay. So here's the deal. Maybe you guys might not all do this. You might say, oh, I have to write a poem. I wrote it. It's good enough. I'm turning it in. Some of you might have done that before. But if you are a famous writer, do you write it once and then be like, this is good, hope somebody puts it in a book? Yeah, they read it and they want to change it and they want to do all these things to it. So if there are sentences, they're on purpose. If there are not sentences, they're on purpose. Okay? So what I'm going to ask you to do is read it sentence by sentence with a partner. I need one quick volunteer to help me read just the very beginning. Anybody want to volunteer to help me? Kara? Okay. So I'm going to show you how I want you to partner read. Here's what I want you to do. When it says sentence by sentence, you're going to read until you see an end of a sentence. What kind of punctuation makes the end of a sentence?
A period?
A period. What else?
Question mark.
Question mark. What else?
Exclamation mark.
Exclamation mark. Point. Now, what kinds of things do not make the end of a sentence?
Commas?
Comma.
Semicolon.
A semicolon. What else?
And those 2 dots.
The 2 dots. What are they called? Colon.
I said colon.
Oh, you did. I missed it. I'm sorry. Or even a dash. Those do not make the end of a sentence.
What about a dot, dot, dot?
An ellipsis?
Yeah, that.
It can. It could also be in the middle. It's a tricky one. You have to kind of use your judgment on that. So Carol and I are going to read sentence by sentence. So Carol, I'm going to start. At the end of the sentence, I will stop and you'll read the next one. The instructor said, go home and write a page tonight.
And let the page come out of you, then it will be true.
I wonder if it's that simple.
I am 22 in color, born in Winston-Salem.
I went to college there, then Durham, then here to this college on the hill above Harlem.
I am the only color student in my class.
Stop. This is what I'm going to have you do with your partners in just a minute. Already, have you noticed some things that are shorter or longer than each other?
Yeah.
Guess what? That's on purpose. Your job is to figure out why they did that. What is the purpose that they did that for? Okay? So I'm going to have you with a pen in hand, partner read the same way. So I'll be partners with one of you guys at this table. Everybody else is a 2 group that you can divide in, right? Okay, so I'm going to have you read it. As you read it, what are you supposed to be looking for or noticing? What are you supposed to be looking for or noticing?
Longer, shorter.
Okay, please turn to your neighbor right now and tell them what you're supposed to be noticing or looking for.
Much longer or shorter sentences?
What about you guys? Okay. All right, so get ready with your partner. Decide who's going to read first. Raise your hand if you're going to start the sentences off. we're going to start first. Hands up. Okay. Get ready. You guys have about 2 minutes to partner read and notice shorter or longer sentences. So I'd like for you guys to stop for a second right there. You might not have gone all the way down. Raise your hand if you noticed a sentence or two that was like super long. Okay. Raise your hand if you noticed a sentence or two that was pretty short. Okay, that's what I want you to be looking at right now. If you made a note by it, I would like for you to add to that. The question is, why is that sentence really long? What is it showing us? Or why is that sentence really short? What is it showing us? What do you think that the author wanted us to think about that? So that's what I want you to think, because it's not an accident. The author could have said something else to make it longer or make it shorter. He chose to say it long or short on purpose. Your job is, what is that purpose? So I'd like for you to look at one or two places where you saw something really long or short, and try to make some notes about why you think that's long. What's it supposed to show us? Okay, so your job is to do this individually. I'm going to give you guys about 2 or 3 minutes to do this. Okay, so let's talk about what we did. You guys looked at it silently first. We read it out loud, or I read it out loud for you. We stopped and looked for words and places and names we didn't know. We stopped and looked sentence by sentence. Now, because we're going to run out of time, I'm going to skip some stuff, but we're going to do it tomorrow or the next day as we practice this more. I'm going to have you guys skip down to number 7 for just a minute. So let's go to number 7. In case we run out of time, I want you to get to this one. It says, look up background information on the author or the time period. If you think about your continuum of responses here, how they get stronger and stronger, looking at background information on the author or the time period, where do you think that falls on your list of responses here? 4s? 5s? So would this help you get some really detailed information that you might understand about why he says what he says?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you guys to spend a little bit of time looking up the author or the time period. Where is this author from? Has anybody noticed yet? Where?
U.S.
This person is from the U.S., specifically in New York. Even more specific?
African American.
Where?
What?
There's a specific part of New York you might notice, okay?
Halo.
So, you might look up background information on that author. This time period, you might look what was happening in his life. So think about what was happening in the early 1900s to 1967-ish, and what you know, or do some readings about that time period, okay? Your job right now is to go into your iPad. You are armed with an iPad. All the information is out there for you to learn. I'm not going to tell you. You need to look up who this author is and about his time period and his background. And that might tell us, why he feels these certain ways, or why is he writing about this particular topic. So I'm going to give you guys about 3 minutes to do that. As you find a piece of information, write it on the bottom of your poem. Maybe you can draw arrows if it connects to something. And then we'll come back and look at this again. So I'm going to give you guys about 3 minutes.